There's an entire transpiration to do with what human was, and strange conundrum, along with an engagement ranging from School of Life, John and Hank Green and natural sciences, introversion and thoughts, etc., etc. But since no one will remember that quite as passively as before, I'll just leave this for what it meant for science literacy's ambiguity otherwise. I know what the difference between the Newtonian gravity and what general relativity meant to his work, and that it is thrown off balance a few times. We know what an astronomical unit is, distance between the Earth and the Moon, and though I can't remember what the speed of light is this very second, I know that 99.9999% will get you to Alpha Centauri in about 4 years. A binary system which when collided is the most immediate nova event to threaten us in about 6 to 7 billion years. Gravitational waves were recently confirmed by measurement with a large L-shaped device with mirrors, 2 black holes colliding, confirming a relativistic theory. The energy to be that bypassing of the cosmic speed limit if space in theory moves at any speed it wants, makes our most compact a reactor with no oomph. I personally would not feel comfortable in a spacecraft as a civilian until re-entry friction was removed from the equation. -0 point isn't a thing anywhere, except in stars. Infinite energy is accumulative, however, equal and opposite reactions, etc. Light is particles, not waves. On the Moon, you shouldn't be there unless you have an absolutely good reason to be there. But we are gonna go anyways, otherwise this isn't a place for flags. The quantum, that is the anomaly of particles appearing and then canceling themselves out in an infinite probability of events, put slightly hastily, events occurring with a spooky action at a distance, illustrates an imagination's cavalier on spacetime itself, if not for something I have to illustrate in the difference between actual science and an ecclesia in namesake. When talking about it, now let's keep it strictly planetarium. PSI and Archimedes' principle under 100 miles of European ocean when 11 is hard enough, as big an engineering feat as I am telling myself it is. Is it worth chemosynthetic ecosystems? I think it is. That little blob beneath that star below the middle point of Orion's belt is in fact 12 light-years across. Stromatolites were key in the oxygenation of our atmosphere and the chemical makeup of our oceans retaining its H2O state. They used to be green. It's a common sense what posses the ability to place us dissonantly against the processes of our climate, as we factor ourselves vulnerable into it. See Yellowstone for reference. See Wu Wei articles and economies of baser flexibility. We are capable of minimizing loss of human life under those 60 give or take years as an effort. The consciousness of health and science in lines when ascertaining from nature and life is mutual to that it was able to be, and that it asked first. See Schrodinger's experiment and snail fish in trays. Time and space are relative. Although atomic decay represents the most accurate of a universal measurement of time, we are beings of significantly inconsistent experience to begin with, just to hit the point home. You should see my oceanography party trick. It's stupid. I've only ever been on a beach once, but I know what saturation decompression hours are and what chromatophores are. Ocean sinkholes are a differential of outer salt water to inner fresh water, altering the buoyancy of the surrounding water, so you laterally fall in rather than get sucked in. If you are a submarine, cats pass the self-recognition mirror test. With sentient comprehension, I might add, the principle of that which is outside what we know, and the multifactness of nature, before we ourselves bore all accountability to what exists, the animal kingdom for example, where first tenant asks you remember what company you were in. The same goes for any endeavor. Ants have in their nature an instinct to share food with enemies under a circumstance. It's quite eyebrow-raising when talking about where the best of consistency might come from. Squirrels, despite their rambunctious turbulence with each other over food and turf, actually possess a decency of priorities, apart from the memory and being food and turf-minded. I think aliens are invested in the preservation of life, if not cautiously standoffish. and that empathy as well as firmness is their nature, suffering is their median of concern, we give the commonality of being its due on many occasions. Distances in others, I think they define their openness with the knowledge of what grows and learns, provided that that openness qualitatively was able to be an observer of what was not yet an observer. Smiley face, transgression in parameter. Another matter, we ourselves exist in intersocial isolation in the human existence. We know a few more things than before, though. I think the suffering of one, and where the respect for that state of being as development as itself, was a literacy amongst them. I think one of the more consistent qualities of the human consciousness, even at its worst, was the way it was drawn into what it knew a wrong and a suffering could be. I think there is a constant of isolation for now amongst people than what the expulsion of its distress assumes. There is nothing good to realize about and around it. Times questions and answers. The electron around a nucleus as an input to output behavior when applying photons, UV light, producing the anomaly of fluorescence. Cave stalactites and stalagmites are the limestone deposits of million-year-old decomposed and compressed ancient sea life. Unlike the infraction zones and collision locations where the South Asian plate meets the Himalayan plate, creating mountain ranges, the Rockies form in a sort of randomized yet nonetheless so friction point on the descending plates snagging of the crust above. The Denisovan, basically Asian Neanderthal, and Neanderthal genetic lineage can be retraced from Homo sapien. Illustrating convergent triviality, or else, we recently discovered a new linking intermediate species between Neanderthal and Homo sapien. Which is kind of a big deal. That guy probably dreamed as much as he knew what decency was. All of his predecessors dreamed, memories, in distance actually retain more detailed neurological footprint as it descends into subconsciousness over the years than what the fracturing of it in either case can summon as a storage in one's neurological history. The nature of your thoughts are much more unformulated and cavernously interpreting than what simply being afraid of ourselves and unknowns tells us we know about them. There is something wrong with you and everyone else.